Good morning, Remnant Road Warriors. It is another Testimony Tuesday. And you guys know, what do I tell you all the time? I bring you the creme de la creme, the best of the best, the top of the crop, the top of the crop, the cream of the crop, the top of the charts. This is a little different. Today, I am bringing you a partial testimony. Yeah, I said it. That's right. A partial testimony. I am bringing you the testimony of our very own Blake Albert. Now, I've interviewed Blake once before. He's been on the show already. He has a show that is coming out called Tattoos to Testimony. That show is airing every Saturday at 5 p.m. And so you will be able to get his full testimony in a part 1, part 2 show, because what I'm giving you today is an abbreviated version of a 3-hour testimony. Let me say it again. A 3-hour testimony. Blake spoke for 3 hours and gave his entire salvation testimony from beginning to end. And so what I'm giving you is just a little bit under an hour. So this 3-hour long recording of Tattoos to Testimonies from Blake, I couldn't give all you. I didn't want to give you guys that whole story here on Testimony Tuesday. What you are going to hear is going to blow your mind. It's going to blow you away. You can't make this stuff up, fam. Y'all, I can't make this stuff up. What I will tell you all is make sure you read your proverb. You can reach Blake at remnantradio.online. He is one of our broadcasters now. And y'all stay tuned, because this story, should I say exclusive? You heard it here first. So without further ado, I give you the testimony of Blake Albert. God's amazing, y'all.
The best thing I can highlight to that is pretty much like how it all started. Of course, I was born into it was a witch coven. There's no other way to say it but to say it. I was born into a witch coven, and my father was a warlock. Biker gangs that were like heavily involved in both sides of my family, and for the longest time, I got to know that side of the family, and my aunt, and well, not just one of my aunts, but multiple aunts and uncles. They were all part of this biker scene, and as I got older, I realized that we really didn't have nothing. We had nothing, to show for. We had nothing to amount to. And my mother would sometimes, she would find certain houses, but we couldn't really afford to just maintain and stay there. So we were part of what my mother calls the Movers of the Month Club. And we ran into other strangers that come to find out these were preachers, and these were people that were a part of certain churches and stuff. I remember being a part of the Salvation Army, and I actually got to enjoy certain things of the Salvation Army. I was a bell ringer. I remember being like 9 years old, ringing the bell with this older gentleman in he would buy me hot chocolates and stuff, and I would stand in the freezing cold, just ringing bells this whole entire time. And mind you, like we moved so much. Like now we're in Pennsylvania, and I remember seeing this little clip art thing in this comic, and it was a scene about how which the older gentleman he gave to me while I was ringing the bell, and I was like, I'm bored, and he's like, well, here's something to read. And I remember reading this comic strip, and it was about how this man was guilty of his sin, and how if he wasn't going to change his life, then he's in danger of hell. And I read that comic, and like to this day, it's still like embedded in my mind. Like, wow, like apparently hell must be a real place, because there's so many people that I've been meeting since I've been a kid, talking about hell all the time and talking about God. And so the only thing that I was interested in is singing songs. I really enjoyed the worship, I really enjoyed the praise and the songs and stuff. But at the same time, it's like I still remember the rituals that were being carried out. And to be honest with you, um sometimes it would block those praises out, sometimes it would block that worship out that these churches would have us do, even though I really enjoyed it and was full of joy getting out of these praise songs and these worship songs. My mind would still go back to those women getting beaten, and there's blood everywhere, and they were being strapped, to tables and chairs, and they were someone strapped to the wall. And lo and behold, when I was like a couple of years later, like 11 years old, my father spoke to my mother again, because my mother was yet again on the run, and we had nowhere to go yet again. And my father took advantage of it and said, well, if you come here, I'll make sure that the kids are taken care of. I'll make sure we can get you a place where, you get to work or whatever. And my mother accepted it. So we came back to my father, and it was the same thing as always, except now these women had collars on. They were dressed in black leather, thigh-high boots, uh, and everywhere they went, they had these collars on. A couple of them had chains connected to the collar. And now that I know what that is now, that was considered a ranking system within what my father had going on of sadomasochism. And I remember being there at Thanksgiving one year, and one woman was cooking, the other one was cleaning, the other one was in the computer room, the other one was outside gardening, the other one was doing something else in some other room, another one was down in the like the basement, but they would call it the dungeon. And I remember my father, he was sitting in his office, and it was just me and my sister. We're just very young, and we're just sitting at the table. She called us to the table, and she called my father Master. She would scream his name, Master, dinner's ready. And my father would come and sit at the table. He had nothing on but this long, lengthy robe, and his name was embroidered on the back of it. I still remember to this day. He had something embroidered right here too, and he would sit at the table. These women would pull the chair, and they would sit at the table, and he would talk with me and my sister, and would say, how's everyone doing? Are you ready to eat? And I say, yes, sir. And all of a sudden, my father snapped his fingers, just like that, and whistled, and all these women came out of nowhere. And the one who was cooking, she put the plates on the floor, and my father had these women literally eat on the floor like they're dogs. He finally said, you and the kids need to stay down in the other part of the basement. And we lived in this tiny area of the basement, and there was no beds. There was like a little makeshift kitchen down there with like a stove and a microwave. There was a little bitty kitchen table down there, and there was just mats that we got to sleep on. And there was one door that led outside. And I remember just being there, and my father would, call up to me from upstairs just to check on me. I don't know, I just to get like some information or whatever of what's happening on down there. And I would spend some time with him, and he would once again, put me into these I I guess like these grooming segments where once again we would watch pornography. We would, he would show me artifacts that has been passed down to his family for generations. He would show me like like objects. He said that they were enchanted. He would show me altars that had literally had the zodiacs on them. And I remember bumping into them one day, and I've never heard my father be so angry before. And he said, "Don't you ever touch that altar again. Don't you ever, I don't care if you bump into it, don't you ever touch my altar." And I was, yes, sir, And one day, my mother, she actually found a job, and she had to walk in the snow. I remember there was like 8 feet of snow that she would have to walk all the way to this called the store called Price Chopper up in Pennsylvania, and she would literally walk, miles in the snow just to go to work. And she told me, don't ever open this door for nobody. Well, for some reason, I don't know if she was trying to test me or whatever, but my mother was still going through some things. She was a very angry person. She was very uh, just you, she was hurt. You could tell she was very hurt all the time. And her and my father kept on butting heads at it as much as possible. But no matter what, he made sure that she would stay down there, and she would put us down there as well. And I remember a knock at the door, and of course I'm young. I'm involved in like this new video game that my father got for me and everything, and I just couldn't wait to play it. And I heard a knock at the door, and I went to go answer it, and it was my mother, and she was so furious that she spanked me. Like she said, "I told you not to open this door for nobody." And my father heard what was going on, and I went ahead and well, he called me upstairs, and I got called upstairs. Little did I know, to this day, my father had cameras placed. I never knew my father had cameras placed on there, but he saw everything what happened, and he said, "Show me, where she hit you at." And I'm sure, So I showed him where she hit me at, and he took pictures of them. He said there were multiple bruises on me, which I really can't remember to this day if there were a lot of bruises on me. Um, he called the police on my mother, came all the way down the steps, grabbed the phone. There was a cord on the phone, put the phone around her neck and started choking her out with it, and started beating her in the face with the telephone, and looked at me and said, "This is how you handle women." And I'm like, to this day, man, it caused so much trauma, like, and because of that happened, I never put my hands on a woman ever. I've forever never ever even thought about even touching a woman like my father did. And so needless to say, my mother tried to call the police. However, something happened. I don't know if they were in my dad's pocket or whatever, but they took her away instead. And my father got us back, and didn't want my sister. He tried everything he could. He even tried to, give away my sister uh, to someone else, because he had other people in the neighborhood that were part of this little cult thing that he had going on. And push comes to shove. Before you know it, my mother got back out. And one day when my father was not home, she came up and grabbed me again and took me all the way back downstairs. It says, "We're leaving here. I'm sorry. I'm never gonna do that to you again." Like, she was just so very sympathetic. Like she was apologetic. Like, and I remember her face is all bandaged up and everything. And went ahead and took us of that out of the part of the basement that very day. We never told a soul. We never told the neighbors. We didn't tell my father. Nothing. We just packed up and left. Going on 13 years old now, and got in. I got into a bad crowd, and started doing certain things, and come to find out they were drug dealers. Some of them were gang members. Um, and my mother found out about some incidences in around the projects, and we went ahead and decided to start looking for another place to stay. So we found another place to stay around Pennsylvania. My mother ended up befriending another person at her workplace, and she had a whole third story uh, house. I can't remember exactly what it's called. A duplex. She got a duplex, and it was like being with my dad again, because I'm not used to having these big houses at this age. So we stayed at that house. However, the same people that were at the projects, which I, I was still involved with them, and they would speak to me um, throughout the days. Sometimes after school, sometimes during or like before. Come to find out, these certain friends of mine were part of this gang called the Latin Kings, and then they I remember one night they were telling me at the balcony, because I had a balcony and I had these windows. One day, I guess we got into it with a group of kids. There was more fights going on, and before you know it, someone around, literally around where my duplex was, got shot like 10 times, and we heard it like right by my window. I looked up, and it was someone that got shot over a bad drug deal. And that was enough for my mother to say, well, we got to move out of here. We contacted people back in Texas. Come to find out, there was some bad things going on down there. So my mother said, we're not going back to Texas. We found the same ones that were in Beaumont, Texas, that they were now in Alabama. So we went down to Alabama, which was a huge journey in itself. And we came to visit them, and this time, the older gentleman that was preaching at one of those churches was very sick, and he was very ill. And we were there just in time for his funeral. He passed away, and his wife was telling us, that we're more than welcome to stay here, get up on our feet, and so that's what we did. I went to high school. Well, I didn't go to high school. I went to junior high school there, in middle school, and that's when I came across certain people that I knew that I recognized. They carried bandanas, and I knew as okay, these are G's that I'm used to. I used to run with these folks, but these weren't Puerto Ricans. These were black folks. So I was at a bit of a disadvantage. Personally, that's how I felt. And so I would go up to them and I would do knowledge to them, and they were impressed. They were like, "How do you know this stuff?" And I was like, "Because I'm from PA. I used to roll with a couple of these guys. They were Latin King and everything." And they were like, "Well, we are BGDs. We are Gangster Disciples." And so they started showing me what they do. I started hanging around with them a lot, and before you know it, they found out I'm an artist. So they would tell me to draw, gang signs all over their hoodies. I would like decorate the hoodies, their shirts. I would do it all over their clothes. There's like sometimes I would do like hats and sneakers. And I remember just doing the 6-point star, and pitchfork, 8 balls everywhere. Surrounded by rednecks, country guys, and I really became heavily involved into the drug scene down there. I had pretty much did everything but methamphetamine because I don't know, I just it wasn't my thing. I saw certain people that were on it that I hung around that were family members, and I didn't want to be a part of the methamphetamine scene. So just got involved heavily into selling it for certain people so I could make ends meet while I was in high school. Then I got involved with other people that were doing it. Then I came across pills, and pills were my thing instead of weed. Then I would mix it up. I would lace my drugs, all kinds of stuff. Then I got to know promethazine, and then I just got heavily involved in so much of that stuff. Then I got involved with the wrong people. They started going to prison left and right, and I didn't want to be a part of that. And so I just stayed away from those people. And one day, I was just seeing this one television show called Miami Ink, and I was like, I could do that, and I got very interested in wanting to do tattoos from there on. And I made my own little makeshift tattoo machine. It was literally out of garbage. I took a milk carton, cut it up. I made a little reservoir. I took a pin, and I melted down the pin to where the needle would stick through. I didn't have a needle per se, so I used I think it was like a paper clip, and I would sharpen it down, and then I would take a whole bunch of them and melt it together, and I would put it around this little piece of where the milk carton was, and I would take a RC motor and would splice the wire, and I would splice it to the connection, and I would plug it into the socket, and I had a full-blown just tattoo machine. And I did the pentagram on my sister, and from then on I just started practicing on all of the friends I had at school, and started practicing on certain people that I met from there, and just got eventually to the point where I feel like I can really hold my own with this tattooing thing. So I started going out, and I started traveling house to house, hotel to hotel, and I would just be a mobile tattoo service. Yeah. It was called Lynette Inc. I loved it. It was my first baby. I was really, really excited about going into the tattoo business. To be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. All I knew is that people loved what I did. And a lot of the people that I did when I was in the streets, they came to the studio and everything, and we would do tattoos, and I was like, oh, okay, sure. She said she was willing to have me come down and do tattoos over there, and where her makeshift studio is. So I said, all right. She bought me my plane ticket, all expenses paid trip straight to California, Southern California, and I went over to where it was beside Long Beach, and I met her, and we got involved, and we got a little intimate in our business relationship, and before you know it, I started doing tattoos for her. I did tattoos over where her family was, and long story short, it didn't end so well. And right before I said I just need to get back to my kids, they're little, they need me, and I need to, start getting this child support thing off the ground, which was just a lie. I really didn't care about it. I just wanted to get away from her and continue my business somewhere else. And she told me before I left, and for some reason, it stuck with me to this day. And she said, I'm a witch. I was assigned, to trap you. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, I'm a witch. And she showed me her hair, and her hair had with this one white strip down it. And I remember from my father and from those women that we were around, I remember what that was a sign of. She was seasoned. So with that being said, she says, well, my job is done, so I'll send you a plane ticket, uh back to Alabama. So I went back to Alabama. uh I continued my tattooing down there. I went back to the same stuff, the same people, and eventually it just got so out of control that I literally stopped caring for my children. I ran out on the mother of my children. I ran out on my children. I kept on seeking pleasures. I kept on seeking money, and I would constantly lie to her and tell her, I'm doing this for us so we can have a better life, can have a bigger house, a bigger everything, because we were stuck living at her parents' house. And I would just tell her all the time, I'm going out and I'm gonna make a better life for us. And literally, I was just having sex with all these women. I was sleeping around all the time. Uh, I was doing drug deals with certain people. I was tattooing in the front while they were making meth in the back. And we would get together and we would, uh, get a plan together, a money making scheme. And it didn't go well. I got robbed. First time I ever had a gun in my face, and they took everything. I had to get another tattoo machine. This time it was going to be a realistic one, a more a more useful machine. And I went ahead and got that machine, and I started my business back all over again without having nobody know where I was. So I started driving out of the state. I started going to Florida. I started going to like places like South Carolina, and I would just do tattoos from there on with more people that I knew how to make connections with. And he started telling me, I see you're using what I taught you. And I was like, how did you know I'm here? And he was like, I always knew where you were. I always knew you, where you would be at. I'm everywhere. You can't escape me. And I was like, okay, okay. So now what? Because I have nothing. Like I'm down here working and I hate it here. I'm pretty much like in trouble with police. There's times I get arrested and I'm just tired of dealing with this. I have this family that I don't like being around. And he's like, why don't you come up to Missouri? So that you could finish what we started. And so I accepted. I went ahead and told Della again I would lie to her and tell her, look, my father is a very powerful man. He's going to get us rich. We're going to get all this money. We're going to get out of here. We are, going to get out of the slums, and we're going to live good. We're going to be happily ever after. And she was over it. She was like, man, you do what you got to do. I'm going to do what I have to do. And I was like, all right. I was a child again. Everything was locked. I didn't know how to get out. Well, one night, out of nowhere, I decided to just walk up the steps from the basement, and lo and behold, the door, it was unlocked. And I opened the door, and I looked at my father's computer desk, and there was like a stack of money laying right there. And I grabbed it, and I was like, I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta leave. I gotta go back to my kids. And there was also this old makeshift, like, well, not really, it was like an antique camera that I got, and I got it. And I remember taking some of the accessories with me and put it in my bag, and I was like, I could sell this. And all the way down to the Greyhound bus station, well, first I had to call the taxi. I gave him specific instructions to not park in front of the house, but park down where the stop sign was at the end of the street. And I gently, quietly snuck out of the house, out of the very front door, and went down the steps, and went all the way down to the street, got into the taxi cab, and it's like I felt a relief. I felt like I could breathe again, and took me all the way back down to the bus station. It was difficult. There was like so many delays. I remember spending 2 nights at a bus station at one time, sleeping on this very, very, very hard, uncomfortable bench. that I could not sleep at all. But it's like something kept on telling me it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. You know, just you know, wait. Just wait till you get back to your kids. Everything's gonna be better. And I said to myself, okay, yeah, you know. And so I went more delays, and I finally ended up at the bus station down in Opelika, Alabama. And reality hit. There's no one to get me. I have no car. There's no bus. These kids is gonna be easy for me. And the next morning, I woke up and I grabbed my cigarette pack and I started getting my cigarillos out. I had Garcia Vegas, and White Owl, White Grapes, and I would take turns rolling them one by one by one. And while I was rolling them, all of a sudden, I heard that same voice that spoke to me back when I was in Missouri, and he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "Cause I want to get high." And he was like, "Why do you want to get high?" I was like, "Cause my life sucks, and I'm just tired of it. You know, there's nothing else in it for me. So shut up and let me get high." You know, and it didn't say nothing else after that. And I was kind of curious. I was like, okay, so that was easy. You know, so let me get back to rolling it. And then the same voice came back up out of nowhere again and said, "What do you plan on doing after you're doing this? You have kids in the living room. You have kids here. So what do you plan on doing?" I said, "I'm planning on getting high, man. This is gonna be the best day." You know what I mean? Like I don't have to worry about the screaming, crying, and whining and all that. You know, they'll go to sleep eventually. You know, I'm gonna have my weed. I'm gonna have my pills. I'm gonna do what I do best. You know, and it said again, you know, uh, where are you going to be going to do this? You have kids in the house. And I was like, I'm gonna go outside and do it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm tired of you talking to me. So I'm gonna put my headphones in and I'm gonna blast some music. And I remember listening to John Walsh's Rocky Mountain Way, and I turned it up. I was blaring it, man. Like my head was just rocking back and forth, and I'm sitting there rolling blunt after blunt after blunt after blunt. I was texting this girl. I said, "Hey, get ready, because I'm gonna come down, do this, do that." I text this other girl. I said, "Hey, get your girls together. We're gonna do this and do that." You know. So I was trying to get things going, trying to have a little party for myself. And out of nowhere, the same voice, while I got done licking the blunt, all of a sudden, he said, "You know, you need to pay attention to what's going on around you." And I was like, I don't need to pay attention to nothing. So there was this little app that I had that connected to my headphones, and it said max volume. So I turned on the max volume and I cranked it all the way up to where I'm gonna drown this voice out. The same voice literally laughed and said, "You really think you could drown me out?" After that happened, I got terrified. Now I'm getting scared. Now I'm just like, okay, something's wrong with this. Okay. So I went ahead, I licked the rest of my blunts I was doing. I was drawing the last one. I was like, okay, all right. I don't know if I'm going crazy. I don't know what's happening, you know what I mean? But I'm gonna put the end to this. As soon as I smoke this, I'm not gonna have to worry about you no more. You know, and I was drawing it out and everything. And I'm still terrified. I can't believe that this happened. Like I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy in here. So I walked past my kids and everything. They were crying and moving around, you know, tossing and turning everywhere. My mom was like, "Daddy, where are you going?" And I didn't even answer him. I was just too much in shock and what just happened. I walked past him. I guess I got dunked in there, and I was like, "Okay, are we done? Can I go play now?" And when he brought that to my memory, I was like, "Wow, that was a baptism." And out of nowhere, I felt this hand. I felt this hand go down to my arm, and that hand touched my hand like this, and I felt like a hug. I felt like a gentle. I felt like this gentle rain or something over me, and it's like nothing I ever felt in my life. It's the most amazing thing I ever felt in my life, and I started crying. Then I started smiling. And I started laughing, like, why am I, what's going on with me? Why am I laughing? Why am I smiling? Why am I crying? Like, what is happening? And he says, look up. And I did. And I looked up. And then he says, do you know who I am? And I was like, I wanted to say it, but I couldn't say it. And I was like, there's no way. Nah, there's no way. There's no way. And he said, come on, say it. Who do you think I am? I'm not going to say it. And he's like, you know who I am? I was like, no, I don't know who you are. You know, I don't want to say it. He's like, go ahead and say it. You know who I am. And before I said it, he said, I am him, I am he, I'm the one you call the Lord your God. And when I heard that, I screamed at the top of my lungs, you know, you really are real. You really have been with me this whole entire time. You know, I couldn't believe what was happening to me. And he just, and I felt, it's almost like he was smiling inside of me. It was like a huge smile, deep down inside. And I was like, I can't believe, I kept on saying, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. I cannot believe this is happening. And I remember him being like this jokingly dad, like, you know, he was like, yeah, man, it's happening. Believe it. It's happening. I'm here, you know. And I was like, I just can't believe this. I can't believe this is happening. There's no way. And I was like, so you mean to tell me Moses in the Red Sea? He said, yep. You mean to tell me Jonah? And he said, yep. And before I could get it out of my mouth, he said, yep. And again, I was so blown away. I fell backwards in the computer chair on the ground. And I was like, I cannot believe this is happening. That's all I could just keep saying. I couldn't believe it. It didn't feel real. It felt like I was in another world. Everything was like, if I can express it, it was blurry because I had tears in my eyes, but all around this blur was like a big ray of light all around this blur. And I just couldn't believe it was happening to me. And he's like, see, this is why I can't come down here, you know what I'm saying? Because y'all want to act up, you know what I mean? Like, this is why, because y'all going to start, you know, doing stuff like this, you know, you're scaring your kids. Because I was screaming and yelling, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. Like, you really are real. Like, you really been with us the whole entire time. And I was like screaming at the top of my lungs. And my kids came in there crying, Dad, what's wrong? And I said, it's okay. We're going to be all right. God is real. And I remember them coming up to me and I would hug them, you know, and I would be like, I just can't believe this is it. And he said, yeah, man, you know. And I was like, wait a second, where have you been? I've been abused. You know, I've been abused, you know, all kinds of ways. Where have you been? You know, you call yourself God. Well, you know, where have you been all my life? Like, I've been through so much crap. And he told me to get up, and I did. And he told me to walk in the bathroom, and I did. And then he said, look in the mirror. And when I did, he said, I've been there the whole time. And when he said that, I was just bawling uncontrollably. And I was on the floor, and I was like, I just don't know what to do now. And I was like, what should I do? What do you need me to do? And he said, you need to get a Bible. And I was like, me get a Bible? You gotta be kidding me. I never read a Bible before in my life. I don't even know where to start. Like, you know, I tried to read it before and it was garbage, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to get no Bible. Where am I supposed to get a Bible, you know? And right as soon as I said that, there was a knock at the door. And it was my next door neighbor, Miss Dottie. And I walked up to the door, and she opened the door. And, well, I opened the door, and she was standing right there, and she said, I heard you need this. And she handed me a Bible. And I was bawling. And she was smiling the whole time. I was just bawling. I can't believe this is happening to me. I got a Bible now, you know. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, this is really happening right now. And gave me the Bible, and I started, you know, looking through it. I was like, Lord, I don't understand any of this. I don't understand. Where am I supposed to start? I don't even know, you know, like, how am I going to read this Bible, you know? And I'm not good at King James, you know, all that stuff. And right as soon as I said that, another knock at the door. And it's Miss Dottie again with a Bible dictionary, a Bible thesaurus, I think it was like a concordance. I heard you also need this. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And then then I heard, God say to me, so what do you think? And it's like, wow, I can't believe it. This is happening. What else do you want? I said, well, I'm trying to do right. I need a job. I need a job. I got kids to take care of. I need a job. Can you get me a job? The phone rings. The phone rings in the kitchen. I go to the kitchen and answer the phone and say, I picked it up. And this man said, hey, I heard you're looking for a job. And I was like, yes, I am. And he said, good, we're looking for someone to help us with construction work. Can you be here 6 a.m? And I said, I sure can. He said, all right, man, make sure you have your boots and stuff, and we're ready to go. And I said, yes, sir. Okay. And I just couldn't believe it. And I was like, wow, I got a job now. I got a Bible, and I was like, what do I need to do now? And he was like, you need to find a church. You need to get baptized. I was like, man,